Welcome to Your World with Prakash Kapila. As you know, we have been talking about how to beat COVID, how to come out of this COVID, and we have done extensive shows on the impact and the effect of COVID. The latest show that we have done was about how to beat COVID and get back into business. So, apart from the businesses, we have the governments that need to take few measures. See, how we know that government should take few measures is during 1929 depression, Franklin Roosevelt came into the president of United States, and then he started a package called New Deal, where some government efforts were put into the large public projects, and that has catapulted America from the depression and gave a very good sounding board. So we already have a blueprint where we will be able to come out of the deep economic depression. And there are two things: good thing and the bad thing. The good thing about this is it's not man-made. It is exogenous circumstances. That means external, which is not created by human. So all other depressions or recessions we have been created by mismanagement of human administrations or finances or either of them. But this one is being put into our fold because of COVID. And all the governments all across the world have suffered. There is no government that has said that, okay, we have not suffered. The other good thing about this is New Zealand has declared that they are out of COVID. The Scandinavian countries gave different responses based on their location, co-location. Whereas you see Denmark has given the lockdown pretty quickly and has come out of the lockdown. Sweden, on the other hand, has not done any lockdown, but still is able to survive the cases. Japan, on the other hand, has used a lot of face masks and is able to do a lot of mitigation strategies. So we have with us now Dr. JP Garu and Madhu Yaski Garu. So both of them are very accomplished and both of them are very sound in their political viewpoints, as well as what the governments have to do, how the governments have to respond, what should we as citizens help our government do it. So what I mean by saying is, let's take their views into consideration and let's talk to our MLAs, let's talk to our MPs, wherever you are, whether you are, you could talk to your congressmen, senators, as also if you're in Europe, you could talk to your representatives. These are generic principles I think are applicable across the world. So, sir, who wants to go first? Madhu Garu, you want to go
JP Garu. JP Garu is my
yes.
Guru Garu. Yes, so much rich experience as administrator, as a politician with impeccable record.
Sir, surely,
both are committed to the service to the society. So I respect all his views and I always learned a lot from him. So let's
very kind of you to say so, Madhukar. Basically, you're asking me to be the dog first. That's all. Right,
no, you have a different experience here. Then you are both administrative and public life law.
So you're very kind. Thank you. We share the same perspectives. Prakash.
So the first thing is about the migrant situation. Like the daily wagers and the migrants, they are the most affected. Whether you take it America, Europe, Asia, wherever it is, the daily wagers have suffered a lot. And most of the daily wagers in India have migrated back to their respective home places, which are like thousands and hundreds of thousands of miles. So maybe we could start with that. What should we as a society do for them, and government in particular can?
The situation in India is far more complex in terms of the unorganized workers and the immigrant workers within the country than anywhere else in the world. Of course, there's a generic issue. Anywhere migrant, unorganized or semi-skilled relatively poor population is bound to suffer more in urban areas. But in India, it's incredibly more complicated for two reasons. Reason one, more than 90% of our workforce in the country is in the unorganized sector. Among large economies, we have the highest ratio of unorganized workers. Only about 8% of India's workforce is in the organized sector. In that, about 60% is in government. The balance 40% is in private sector. Two, on top of that, the government imposed an extremely rigorous lockdown, well-meaning, good intentioned, but without any advance notice. We should have understood that about 130, 140 million migrant workers are living in appallingly poor conditions in big cities in India. They're the fulcrum of our economy, or construction, or small and medium enterprises, or services, or domestic health, a whole lot of things. Without them, economy cannot run. Now, if we had given them, let's say, 4 or 5 days notice, and given them some transport subsidy and facilitated their travel, and told them to calmly go back to their villages if they don't have proper homes and families and ration cards and bank accounts in the big cities, you go back, because anyway the work is going to come to a standstill. There will be no income. And naturally, once there's no income, work is at a standstill. People who are living alone without their families in hot summer, without any income, most often without any proper home, without any proper sanitation facilities, where there is some kind of a ramshackle home, 30, 40 people share the same room or the house. Obviously, lockdown will not really work to their advantage. And the psychological and economic devastation is very, very considerable. We did not take that precaution. As a result, two things happened. One is enormous fear psychosis. The families are there, a few hundred or a few thousand kilometers away in another language, in another state or whatever. There's no income. And all kinds of 24-hour dramatic news, so many cases, so many hospitalizations, so many potential risks. So people are terrified, apart from the psychological trauma. And now they are desperate to get back to their villages, even if there's no income there. The second part is the urban management of this country is extremely inadequate. Our urbanization itself is very, very low. India, again, has the lowest level of urbanization among all large economies in 21st century. We only have about 33 to 34% urbanization. But even with that limited urbanization, the conditions are appallingly poor. You take a country like Singapore or a country like the United Kingdom, two ends of the spectrum. They have made public housing in cities the mainstay of their economic policy and urban management. In India, nowhere did we seriously take urban housing for the poor in a sensible way. We kept talking about it almost for everything. There's a planning commission program, there's a government program, there is some name. But the reality is almost nothing really significant happened. Therefore, urban homelessness, urban squalor, urban ghettos, urban slums, this is a very living reality in this country. A city like Mumbai has 60% slum population. Other cities have, in varying degrees, the problem. So a combination of this meant devastation to millions of these people, the poorest of the poor. And one thing we have not recognized, except a few experts in the country, is urban poverty is much more gruesome than rural poverty in India. We all talk about rural poverty and all kinds of rural programs. There is poverty, there's no question, everywhere in the country. My own sense is, if you take the COVID health crisis part of it, India has lucked out. Whether it is because of the extreme heat of the summer or because of the BCG vaccination, which gave some kind of a generic immunity to Indian population, or is it because of innate immunity to certain forms of viruses because the receptivity in the cells is not there for us genetically? Whatever the reason, the truth is there might have been large number of infections, but infection converting into serious disease is extremely rare in India. Hospitals hardly see COVID patients who require hospitalization and critical care. But because the governments had to take the precautions, there is a self-induced coma. The economic system has gone for a toss, and therefore the crisis now is economic. But I think we should take heart that at least now we understand the problems a little better. urban management problem has been there for long. At least the COVID crisis forces us to focus attention on that. Healthcare crisis has been there for long. India.
Okay, sir. Yeah, Madhu garu, your take on this, Andy, about migrants and other difficulties they are facing. JP garu gave a very good info on that. Your viewpoint.
To begin with, Prakash, no, you rightly started with the FDR quote, Prakash, because I happens to live near New Hyde Park, where my wife was working there in Rhinebeck, and I happens to visit the FDR's library. And in fact, I did quoted the day before the package announced about the New Deal, what FDR has started into the Great Depression when he got re-elected, and the economic package and jobs to the youth. I'll come on touch upon that subject later. What JP Garu has said about the urban poor, the urban poverty, which is while everyone agreed and the whole experts also agreed upon about the lockdown. Well, there may be some reservations how it has to be or should have been implemented, but we have no doubts that lockdown has to come in any case. But without thinking about these crowds of migrant labor, the plight and the poverty which they are facing, how they're going to survive. I think I further add on to that my experience as a 10 years into Parliament. What JP has said it about the urban poor, poverty, and the residents problem. During the UPA government, there are two programs which I would like to touch upon, PURA and JNURM, Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. We are providing urban infrastructure because all experts says in a decade, in another 10 years or so, or 2030, the 50% of the India's population is going to live in urban areas. So the government at that point of time, I mean, that's a Manmohan Singh ji's ideas of even drafting experts into advisory committee. I think fortunately JP Garu also was advisory committee member to advising the government at that time. So cutting across political differences, whatever you have, but the government recognized at that point of time, take experts' opinion into consideration. So the urban JNURM was touching upon to thinking about a decade ahead. Like luckily, Jayapal Reddy ji was minister at some point of urban development. So the JNURM was trying to address those residential problem and other amenities to the people who are living in urban areas. So which we subsequently not taken over those projects. And PURA is another scheme where the lakhs of people coming for the jobs to the urban, moving to urban areas. This is President Kalam was coined. PURA is like providing urban facilities in rural areas. So if you do that, like if you look at in the US, each smaller cities were self-sufficient. You have a job, there's some factories are there. I think in Ohio, one of the city where the Boeing's engines manufactures there. That means the people living in that area, they don't have to go to the nearby bigger city. They can live in that city itself, smaller cities, so that they can self-sufficient. Likewise, Tokyo also did the same thing. We visited Tokyo factory where the different parts of the Toyota manufacturing, car manufacturing parts comes from different parts, so that like people doesn't have to cluster it in the cities. So here in this current situation, the COVID pandemic, what it's created, giving a 4 hours notice and declaring the lockdown without thinking of those lakhs of migrant workers, as they live most of them on site with a hardly there's no proper roof also. They'll be working whole day. They use that shelter just to sleep without any toilets or makeshift with the tins or the blue sheets which you can see. With that they make a small shelter type and they live. Where the government has failed, we notice it here. They could have spent minimal money to address this issue of migrant laborers before providing further jobs. During lockdown, there's no job. It's completely curfew. Unlike in the US, I stuck up got stuck in US, came in March 12th, and supposed to return 3rd April, but I didn't. But what I've seen here, there's no such curfew in spite of highest number of cases in New York State and city. There's no complete curfew. The subway, metro trains are running, buses are running, in spite of over 6,000 cases, positive cases among the metro workers. They didn't shut down because the common people and the people who work, the healthcare workers, use those public transport. So that is the thinking or planning should have been done. So what we're seeing here, it is very pathetic, and it's sometimes if you see one of the Telugu song written by Adesh Ravi about the plight of migrant labor, and as a citizens of the country, we feel ashamed to not reach out to them and seeing their plight, and it should have been, government should have been more human. Right to live is an international fundamental right, and that has been clearly violated here. The government should have been much more with human heart. They should have thought about it, and few thousand crores which they have collected, state chief ministers, central government, PM care of thousands of crores, they should have spent and avoiding this. I'll give one more example why and how the other developed countries, you rightly pointed out how New Zealand came out of lockdown, how US is coping up. Even my own law firm, there's a facility to apply to the government. First, initially, they give as a loan to cover the payroll so that the staff will not be, the payroll which should not be affected. They're giving this as a 3 months. And once you start paying or shown the proof that the staff has been paid, that can be part of it, can be waived off. Every citizen of the country here getting, if they're paying $99,000 in $98,000 income, family income if $198,000, they get a $1,200 a relief check from the IRS. Students, my daughter going to law school, she got a $1,200 refund. So this is the economic package in developed countries, they're giving it. What Indian government should have done, they should have transferred some money to the migrant labor right away. Whereas government employees' salaries has been cut. The Telangana government says that they only pay 50% of the salary. When the pensioners' salaries package has been cut. But you're asking private employers without giving any package to them to pay to their laborers. It is tough. It's how which any private employer is going to pay without getting any relief from the government. So this is the without proper planning happened this migrant labor crisis in India. It's a time to government to be open up and take opinions of experts into the administration and politics. Without making it as a political, they should have taken this their views into consideration. And even now, so what today, I think 28th May, where the first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's death anniversary, Congress come up with a plea to the government to give 10,000 rupees to each and every these poor laborers, and increase that Manrega, that where rural employment scheme which started, the government is continuing, providing 100 days employment to the unemployed youth in the rural areas, unemployed people. Instead of 100 days of employment, 200 days. So I would like to add one point here, what FDR did it in those years of Great Depression, jobs to the youth. How the youth have been, the CCC, the center was created, where unemployed youth can be between age of 17 to 24 can register. And they've been given jobs by the government in most of the environmental protection areas like planting trees to other areas which government has started without just giving money, given in those money to the youth and providing jobs to them so that the country at large could have been benefited. So some of the schemes could have taken into consideration. So here, this big crisis still is a crisis, and I think government is So I'm not going to come on to the which political party which in the state or center, but both the state and center should work together and come up with a proper plan without thinking what exit plan could be. See what you have just said it in New Zealand. Like look at in the where we heard about Wuhan lockdown in December itself. We should have learned their experience. Now Wuhan is reopened. Children are going to the school. You heard about Taiwan. Taiwan is hardly locked down.
Yes.
They've seen what happened in Wuhan and China. They stopped the flights, people coming from China. They stopped it, and within 3 days, it's been reopened. So we totally, I think I could see the failure of the government to reach out those crores of migrant labor. It need to be addressed at war foot level now.
To interject, JP Garu, your take on the Congress action plan. The Congress is a Congress party in India, which is a major political party, and it has a lot of saying in the parliament as well. So what is your take, sir? There are 4 points that Yaski Garu has.
The poor need assistance, particularly in times of crisis. There is absolutely no doubt about it. I think everybody agrees, and there is an impressive consensus across the political spectrum. For instance, the Employment Guarantee Act enacted by the UPA government has been continued by the current government. And if I am not mistaken, in the wake of the COVID crisis, the government has enhanced the allocation by another 40,000 crores. So that money has to go into the poor people's pockets. There is very little doubt. I think on that, all parties in India are united. And some little welfare is given, unlike in the United States, where a very substantial package has been delivered. More than $2 trillion, I think $2.3 trillion has already been released by the US. As significant part, as Madhu said, has gone to the small and medium enterprises' wages. About $600 to $700 billion has gone only towards the wage component. 90% of it's written off, it's given as wages. And then the individual taxpayer, money is credited to them depending on their income, subject to a ceiling of $99,000 income, annual income per person, for 2 persons in the family. And the unemployment allowance has been substantially enhanced. India, unfortunately, is not in a position to do that. The government did about 20 lakhs of economic stimulus. We have already mopped up the resources for RBI. There was a big debate in India whether the resources of the RBI should be taken over by the government of India for the budgetary purposes. And the expert committee was constituted. That was well before the COVID crisis. And a lot of money was taken away from the Reserve Bank of India. Similarly, the Navratnas, the big public sector undertakings, all their reserves were taken away by the government because government is the owner. It's because there was a liquidity crisis. There was a budgetary crisis in government. This was before the COVID crisis. And COVID economic crisis is extraordinary all over the world, unprecedented. And the Indian government, unfortunately, has no capacity to handle this crisis through fiscal and monetary means. That is our problem. Now, if we try and spend beyond a point, either you have to borrow or you have to print currency. Now, India is not the United States. Whenever there is a global crisis, the dollar value goes up. Everybody wants the dollar.
Right.
Whereas rupee value comes down. If you want to overspend in rupees by printing currency, there will be hyperinflation. Yeah. Rupee value further comes down. In fact, in the last 2 months, if you notice, the dollar rupee exchange from 70 rupees has fallen to 75 rupees now. Now, it will become much worse. More than the exchange value alone, there will be a dramatic escalation in the prices eventually, leading to hyperinflation. And second, if you want to borrow, the global lending community will not be kind to us beyond a point. Up to a point, they'll be flexible. World over, everybody is now breaching normal fiscal deficit norms. So up to a point, we can do that. But we have no room for tremendous fiscal flexibility. Unfortunately, good, bad, ugly, we have to accept that. Now, given that, we have to now look at, in my judgment, 3 things in the context of the immigrant laborers, and another big thing in terms of the larger economy. Immigrant laborers, the immediate humanitarian crisis is already created. Now, we can only learn lessons from the past mistakes, but we cannot undo it now. We can only prevent that in future. Now, there are millions of people on the road in the hot summer, and the TV cameras and the newspaper pictures, they're showing the harrowing tales of the poor being dehumanized, being robbed of their dignity, their basic needs, and basic comfort. No, it's terrible. Now, the government and civil society, government includes union and the states, and all the civil society organizations. In fact, if anything, it's the civil society organizations that are coming forward, because India is by definition, by nature, a very charitable nation. We want to be helpful to our neighbors as far as practicable. Though the resources are limited, people are putting in a lot of effort to try and see that at least some immediate relief, some food, water, some shelter temporarily, and then some transport arrangements. And wherever the governments are creating hurdles and misplaced zeal, for instance, no transport to go to their home states, etc., I think we must remove all those hurdles. We must allow people to go, because as I was saying before, the health crisis part of the COVID crisis is not really serious in India at this point of time. And I'm reasonably confident that while the infection may spread silently, it's unlikely by current evidence that it will lead to a serious healthcare crisis in hospitals. And therefore, while we must do all kinds of things, constant testing, India is very weak in testing. Both antigen testing and antibody testing, rapid tests are available. We must do on a much bigger scale. India's testing rate today is only, I think, about 1,500 or so, or 1,700 per million population. Whereas the United States is now close to about 50,000 per million population. Germany is
come
close
down
to
to 135 per million, 135 tests only India is doing. Very low.
They've gone to 1,000.
Yeah, come further down. Yeah.
All right. So, sir, can you throw a specific light, JP Garu, on 4 points that
so the first is the humanitarian crisis. We have to deal with that. Now it's there, it's upon us, and I think whatever is possible is being done. We must do it even better. I understand today Supreme Court also has given directions. We don't need directions from Supreme Court. This is common sense. These are our people. This is our country. True. We don't require the court to tell us what to do. It's a disgrace. But anyway, if at least one more voice is added, that's good. But we have to do whatever we can. Second, eventually, within the next few weeks, again, economy must start. Already it's begun to be reactivated, because that's the only solution. When the government cannot pump enormous money into people's pockets, when all the production activity has stalled, the economic cycle has completely been frozen, there's a self-induced coma, you will only perpetuate poverty and aggravate poverty in the country and create mass unemployment in a country already unemployed. Therefore, economic activity will start, and therefore the migrant laborers, others will again start working everywhere. When that happens, I think from this experience, at the very least, in the short term, we must do three things. One is every one of these people, even if they are seasonal workers, they're entitled to a ration card where they work, subject to certain conditions. If you stay for more than, let's say, 90 days, 100 days or something, they must get ration cards, because the ration card means many other benefits also flow through ration card. Some form of identity. Very often, the immigrant workers have their ration cards, Aadhaar cards, Jan Dhan accounts way back in their homes, their villages, not in the cities where they are residing for economic purposes. And that is the chief cause of the welfare failure for the immigrant laborers. The second is a health card. States like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, several other southern states, other states, they are trying to do something about healthcare, Aarogyasri or in some other form. Now, those benefits are linked to residential status. Immigrant laborers must get the health card. Third, and this is where people like Madhu must come forward, and the political parties are so proactive. In a political democracy, unless the people have vote, they won't have voice. Unfortunately, urban immigrant, hardworking, working population in the unorganized sector, because their permanent residence happens to be in most cases villages, they don't have voting rights in the towns where they work. Therefore, they're political orphans. If you give them a choice, they can't have voting rights at both places. Maybe one member can have in the village, one member can have in the city, but they can choose and they have voting rights, then automatically the political system will be far more sensitive. Now, only from humanitarian point of view, we're sensitive. Politically, we're not sensitive because they have no votes in the cities. If I'm from Bihar, I live in Hyderabad for some time for a worker in Bengaluru. Now, Bengaluru politicians don't care for me because I don't have a vote there. If I also have a vote there, the political parties will have to take note of their plight. The governments will have to address their concerns. These three things can be easily done. And the bank account, Jan Dhan account, you can guarantee that there's another account in urban areas and account can be easily transferable. If this much is done in the immediate future, there'll be some element of security, some voice, and some possibility of the future. In the medium term, in the next 2-3 years, we must take up a massive urban housing program, efficiently executed, honestly administered, and really to scale. We have many programs, as Madhu said, we have JNURM, we have many other programs, well-intentioned programs. The problem is the scale. The problem is the efficacy. The problem is the speed. Now, when you have no scale, efficacy, and speed, that means no resources, paltry resources with grand ambitions, or no empowerment locally, no transparency, and very slow snail-like pace. All these will not yield dividends. In a growing economy with massive population, you must dramatically step up these programs of urban housing, quality of education. We are spending money, but education is in doldrums. And already I mentioned the healthcare. The third one, in the medium and long term, what we should take up is urban governance. At least now, the local government started with great anticipation in 1990s, have by and large spectacularly failed. We cannot now resurrect them. We cannot change the constitutional architecture for whatever reasons. Let us at least create a separate architecture for these big cities, because most of the economy in India is now in big cities. In fact, the 8 big cities of India account for 50% of all the demand. Therefore, now we must realize that if you want to protect the economy of the country, protect the poor in these places, improve the quality of life, at least these big cities, million-strong cities, there are 60 or 70 such cities, if their architecture is more rational, the mistakes we committed in the 74th Amendment, they're corrected here, and we empower them with accountability and service delivery, then there'll be a dramatic rejuvenation of the cities. If these steps are taken, if the new welfare architecture, then the poor will really have a better deal. We require a new deal for the poor. The old-fashioned notion of giving something, now governments are giving. Prime Minister said 500 rupees from union government, states are giving 1,000 to 1,500. This is all paltry.
Awesome, sir. Awesome. So, Madhugaru, we have 3 minutes time. So I give you this time. What is your last take on this? JP Garu has said like 5 or 6 different viewpoints. So what does Congress stand on that, if I may say?
Number one, the immediate task is to send these laborers at the government cost to their own respective homes, because without their moral, any organization to boost the moral of the employees, we have to organizations give different packages to them, take them on weekend trips, to give other incentives for them to work. So these laborers are contribute to over 50% of the GDP. Any urban infrastructure development projects without these laborers cannot work. So these laborers have to come back to the city, the respective cities, to start work.
So JP Garu has said about the health card, the ration card, and the more freedom to local governments and
voting rights.
Voting rights.
He's absolutely right. I'm totally agreeing with him. What he said is, unfortunately, India, the whole thing goes around electoral system. If as voting right, this response of these respective governments would have been different. I totally agree with him. The examples which I've quoted from the US is not to replicate same in India. India has different problems, but those are learning experience. You may not have to give same packages, but India should come up with within its own resources to help. So what he said is absolutely right. I think the transfer of ration card, which they're talking about government, and which is Jan Dhan account, which is there, they can directly transfer those money into their accounts. The smart city program started by this Modi government, they should start implementing it instead of just talking about it. So most of the programs as sincerely to be implemented what government is talking about. And while adding what all he said is, those absolutely read it: education, health, and housing.
We are at the end of our show, and hold on, we'll come back in our next episode. It was a very good conversation, and we'll continue this conversation. The show is coming to an end, and we'll get back to you.